Welcome to the Red Gauge Podcast. If you could please like, comment, subscribe, and share, it helps out the show a ton. I'm your host, Kyle, with my other host, Josh. And today we've got the, I don't know what it's Freaky? The Freaky Doug Sells. Is that an appropriate introduction for a person?
It's called Freak of Nature, which, we could talk about that.
So Doug had a long and storied track career, ended up at the University of Oregon as a decathlete, which was an interesting twist for anybody who knew him when he was young. And we'll talk about that later. And so, let's get into it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah. Excited to be here, you guys. Chat with you a little bit.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell us how you got into sport?
Pretty much like the typical childhood, summer soccer, playing school sports, elementary basketball, things like that. And, track didn't really come around until middle school, where my dad would start getting us involved in those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Even then, 5th grade, 6th grade, I'd be doing the regular sports, and we'll talk about my dad a little bit later. My dad's a throws coach and huge track fan. We go out in the yard, and he'd have a disc laying out there, and he'd have a shot laying out there, and he'd go try it out, And so we'd be tossing them and throwing them. I didn't even know it was a sport.
Yeah,
it was just a thing like tossing the baseball with your dad out in the yard,
throwing the heavy baseball.
Yeah, it's like, this thing's cool. It's a big heavy frisbee and a big steel ball. And we work on it and figured out that I had a little bit of talent for it, but I was still a little scrawny kid, so evolving into middle school, started doing track and started doing the running events, hurdles, came in with a big knowledge of throwing just from my dad.
Right.
So I had to step up on kids like that, and was still just skinny. I was tiny in 6th grade. 7th grade, I think I grew to 6'2", but was still about 140 pounds.
Yeah.
So tall and skinny.
Yeah.
Classic thrower's body.
Exactly,
Classic thrower's body.
But somehow I was able to get the levers going on that and throwing and practice with my dad. We'd practice at home, practice at track practice, and just ended up being really good all of a sudden at pretty much any track event that I would step into. And then it would, and things evolved into high school where it was like, this is track. And my dad was that type of parent that he loved track. He had this opportunity, he's been a track fan all his life. Did track in high school, threw a little bit at UW, and was just a student of the sport. And you could kind of tell that he's like, oh, this is my chance to get you rolling. My son is actually good at this, so let's go. And he was coaching me in almost everything. And then high school came about. And I don't know if you guys want to get into the
I'm just
timelines of things. Or?
Yeah, the great thing, we were just talking about this before we went on, was like the great thing of having a son or a daughter that winds up being not only interested in your sport that you coach, but also very talented in it, right? Like that's maybe it's not rare because you're around it, but still, like, what a great like feeling. Like your kid is interested. Like a lot of times what the kid will do is not necessarily rebel, but go find their own thing. Like my oldest does like football, but he's more of a basketball guy, right? Like basketball is his thing. He wants to do it. He still can't beat me yet, but like that's his thing. So having a kid that's not only interested in track, but then excelled at it must have been like as a coach dad. Like
you kind of see that situation, and there's a lot of parents that were the same as my dad that end up having a kid that either not interested or just doesn't quite have what it takes.
Right.
And then vice versa. The kid's really good, and the kid doesn't have a coach. They're looking for guidance through other things, and they don't get that full-on coaching experience.
Yeah.
It's funny, that throws was your dad's, one true love, because he's not really built like a thrower. I mean, he's a stocky guy.
No, he's a stocky guy. I discovered a picture of him from high school, and he was pretty muscular, you could say, but hearing stories, he doesn't like to talk about himself a lot, and hearing stories from other people in high school, they called him the Mighty Mite. I think was his nickname. He worked out hard. He discovered it all on himself. He became a student of the sport of anything, and he was short. He's 5'6".
Yeah,
he's really short.
Yeah.
Luckily,
powerful guy for sure.
Powerful guy,
definitely lots of power, but not the typical frame you'd think of with a shot putter.
And he ended up being a 54-footer for Shelton, and back in the '60s, which is pretty awesome.
I would have loved to have seen him gliding across the ring because I'm sure that he was moving some air.
Yeah. It's a lot of ground for a 5'6" guy to cover.
Yeah.
And, you know, in a dirt ring mostly. I'm sure he came across some concrete rings
Mm-hmm.
here and there, but, you know, down in Loop Field, you hear the stories about Loop Field.
Yeah.
Dirt
Yeah.
and mud.
So yeah, for anybody who at Shelton had a unique track where it would go underneath the stadium on the backstretch. And so people, you know, you'd sit in the stadium and you could only see 3/4 of what was going on. And so my dad ran a leg there for like a 200 or something. He was like, as soon as you got behind the concrete or behind the, you know, the wood or whatever the stadium was made out of, all of a sudden elbows started flying.
Yeah, that's when the rules went away.
Yeah, you'd enter that with 8 guys and you come out on the other side with 4, and it was a pretty damning environment apparently. So I always thought that was pretty fun.
It's fun to talk to any old athlete that ever ran there. They've got that same type of story. The infamous tunnel.
The infamous tunnel.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. It really is.
We're just going to get all the most competitive athletic kids and we're going to put them in a spot with no supervision. See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Yeah, so let's talk about high school sports. So you got in freshman year. I believe you still hold our freshman high jump or pole vault record.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like for you? Because I know I've heard your dad's stories a lot because he was my coach and I was a few years behind you. So I've heard his stories a lot about, you know, the path through sport and stuff. But what was it like for you to come in and be like, I'm gonna do pole vault, and then never mind, I'm gonna be a shot putter?
Right. It was a lot of switching back and forth. You know, when I actually did pole vault a little in middle school, my dad was friends with just about anybody in the track community, and he knew a guy, Charlie Sugar, who's a Shelton alumni. He was coaching at Interlake High School at the time, and so we drive there every once in a while. And Charlie would get me introduced to pole vault, and so I did pole vault a little in 7th grade. They actually had pole vault in middle school, which was cool. Pole vault, I think 11.6 in the 7th grade and 13.3 in the 8th grade. So it's like I'm a pole vaulter. Coming freshman year, I'm still getting coached a little bit by Charlie, going to camps, and come in hot. Went 14 feet my freshman year. The state freshman record was 14.6.
Yeah.
And so we were chasing that. Didn't quite get it. And after that year, I was having a little bit of tendonitis in my knee. It was hurting. It was hurting to jump.
Yeah.
You know, that takeoff, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
We'll come to that injury later on,
Yeah.
which kind of builds up to that. So it was tough. And, of course, my dad's like, well, let's throw. And so sophomore year come in, I was about 170 pounds my freshman year. Sophomore year, I kind of became a man.
Yeah.
Hit about 200, 205.
Yeah.
But was still sprinting, still hurdling, all that stuff. And so I stopped pole vaulting. We just decided, you know, pole vault's not the
We didn't
thing.
have any poles for a 200-pound guy.
No.
A steel
No.
pole. They had me do
Steel
it once
pole.
with a steel pole.
Yep.
But
I think we still have that back in the
Yeah,
tunnel if you ever want to get
go
it out.
do it again.
Yeah.
At 260 pounds.
Hey.
See if I can't break a steel pole.
We're going to film it.
Steel rated. Yeah. That'll be the best watched episode. So throwing, and I'm throwing, I'm lifting hard. You know, you hear stories about Coach U, you know, got into Coach U's class my freshman year. That helped a lot, and then kept on going with that. And my dad was a huge fan of unconventional lifts,
Yeah.
you could say. They had this one thing called the kneader press. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. You get in a little stance, and you basically huck the barbell up
Yeah,
off
it's
your
like
chest.
a 45-degree angle kind of thing, pushing
And-
out, similar
and
to pressing a shot.
You huck it up, and then you got to bring it back.
Mhm.
And things like that. A lot of dumbbell lifts, like incline dumbbell. A lot of body control things, power cleans, all those things.
I remember him talking to me about getting like a 200-pound sandbag and just working in the bleachers with it. He
Yeah.
was like, he's, you know, not that was something that you did, but that was something he recommended for me. He was he's like, don't spend too much time to like do some weird shit.
Yeah. No, I had my share of sandbags. We'd push the car behind
Mm-hmm.
the stadium. Still to this day, I've got some old teachers and some people say, oh, I remember you. I remember seeing you push the car
Yeah.
behind the stadium thinking it was broke down or something. It's like, no, that was just the workout. You know, as hard and as fast as you could push it. So I got strong. I mean, really strong for my size and really explosive, and was throwing really well that year. Worked my way up to the state meet. Came in, I think, not ranked at the top. You know, maybe ranked 4th or so, and pulled off a good throw. And all of a sudden, it's like I remember Brian Brickert was there, and he's like, "You just won the state championship." It's like, oh, that's awesome, cool. You know, you you're so focused on just doing it all, and so all of a sudden it's like you just won the state shot put championship as a sophomore, and I was still a little guy, you know, compared to all the other guys you see. And I've got this picture. One of my favorite pictures is from the sophomore year up on the award stand. I'm standing in the middle.
Yeah.
And 200-pound guy doesn't look that big, and there's like two 300-pound guys on second and
Yeah.
third place.
Yeah.
You're on first and you're shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I have
the men next to you are.
Well, and they're encroaching on me
Yeah.
on the, you know, so I've got my arms sucked in
Yeah,
with
yeah.
a big smile on my face, and it's one of my favorite pictures. Just
Yeah, I've got a photo somewhere of, I think it was like a Simplot Games or something, where I'm standing in like the second place spot, and the dude on the fourth place spot is taller than me, you know, and I'm like, I'm the smallest guy on that podium by a lot, and I'm
Yeah.
not a small guy, you know,
Right.
so it's a really funny experience to be a thrower.
You discover people out there that are that are bigger than you.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you don't know they exist, and then you realize, wow, that is what the real deal looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. Like the big itself isn't necessarily going to help, but if everything else is equal, if we're both as explosive,
Right.
but I'm gigantic,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
that's where it helps. Like some people think the size is just good for size's sake, but not necessarily. It
Yeah.
gives you a leg up for sure. But
Well, if you can move the big.
Yeah.
that's why you're right.
Yeah.
Well, like once
Yeah.
that starts moving around, like that's where it becomes beneficial.
Yeah, I think like right now, you know, in men's shot put, the two best shot putters ever are competing right now, and it's Joe Kovacs and Ryan Krauser, and Joe's 5'11" and Ryan's 6'7" or
Yeah.
6'8" or something. So like, you don't have to be ginormous. I mean, Joe is still 350 pounds. He's still a
Right.
giant dude, but
And you move.
yeah. He's got probably one of the biggest engines ever for a track. So, you know, it's pretty cool. So, one sophomore year.
One sophomore year. So
I have a question real quick.
what's that?
Did you fall into any of the predictable potholes? Like, did you become uncoachable for 6 months? Were you a giant pain in the ass to everybody around you?
Probably.
Yeah.
Start going on podcasts.
These little dark spots, you know. Yeah. I think. I mean, I've always been a modest guy.
Uh-huh.
I get embarrassed when people talk about my successes, and sometimes I don't like talking about myself. You know,
Yeah.
it's just a weird thing for me. So I think I was still staying modest. There was all the congratulations, all the state champion, and but we kept it going, like because we did summer track.
Yeah.
and you just kind of keep rolling. There's no time to sit
Indoor
back and,
season, everything. Yeah.
And I think my dad was like, well, don't get too satisfied now. You know, he wouldn't let me just sit back and
Right.
be like, I did it.
Yeah.
It's like, nope, we're moving on. We're doing the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but coming in about that time is, you know, when you start feeling the pressure build
Uh-huh.
a little bit.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, well, I just won. So what am I going to do next year?
Yeah, yeah.
Am I going to win again?
Double win.
I don't know. It'd be awesome. You know, all the talk about like, you know, the two-time, three-time state champion and something, and trying to dominate an event. Junior years when I got a little bigger, I think maybe 210, probably the biggest I've ever been athletic wise.
Did you have like Coach you and Coach Hinkle, like how often were they talking to your dad? Like maybe Doug could come play some sports this.
football.
Probably
That's our football coach.
more
back
often
then.
than probably I knew. And I always had the pressure to play football. I wanted to play football.
Yeah.
My dad did not want me to play football. I think he wanted to see me go.
He
along
saw the
track.
vision. Yeah, he saw the
Yeah.
vision and
Yeah.
Yeah, so I.
He was not ever very complimentary towards football. He was like, why would you take a good athlete and throw him in a meat grinder? Like, what's the point in doing
Right.
that? Like, you put him in a sport that's still going to,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think he saw me my bell rung my 7th grade year just playing middle school.
Uh-huh.
I got slammed, you know,
Yeah.
playing back when Miller, you know, they had full beards
yeah.
playing
yeah,
in
yeah.
the 7th grade.
And a guy like you was getting the ball a lot.
Yeah, because I could run.
Yeah,
yeah,
But I was
yeah,
still skinny.
Yeah.
So if I
What are
get
you guys doing tonight? We're gonna turn around and hand it to Doug.
yeah.
And he's going to get hit 12 times.
But
tonight.
if I got caught, they could one hand me to the ground. You know?
Yeah.
So I think my dad saw that and was just like, nah, and didn't want me to get hurt. So there was always that desire to play. I always
Sure.
loved it. All my friends played. You know, and it's football. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you're thinking, well, I'm kind of the superstar in track right now, but you don't really get that recognition.
Yeah,
unless
definitely
you're
a
playing
bigger
football.
community
Right.
impact.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was always kind of tough, but it was okay. Losing my train of thought. So going into junior year,
Yep.
mostly just a thrower, but I was still running. I was still doing hurdles, things like that. I could still move the body. So I made state in shot and disc, made it in the hurdles also. I think I had a decent hurdle race, maybe third place.
Yeah. That probably doesn't happen very often where there's competitors in the shot put and the hurdles.
No, it's really rare. I got a little story for my senior year about that too, about just like how tough that was to manage. And so came in, was throwing really well, over 60 feet a couple times, and just hit another throw. Hit the throw in the state meet.
Yeah.
Same situation. Oh crap, you just won.
Yeah.
It's like and we got it. And so now we're going on 2-time state champion with all the other events and everything going on, and pressure's on again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rolling into senior year, and of course junior year is when the recruiting happens and all that stuff. It's new for me. Yeah, a little small town kid. Even though we've been traveling around to a lot of track meets, you're just like, holy crap, this is big time. Had coaches flying to the house.
Yeah.
Took visits to some colleges, and
yeah, all my visits, all the coaches who flew in came to see me at Kathy's place, which I thought was pretty fun. Yeah, which I appreciated because my house was crazy, so it was nice to have. I really appreciated your dad and Kathy. Through high school, they were like second parents, kind of. So they're very great people.
Well, they're huge fans of you.
Yeah,
yeah.
What did your junior year? So was junior year when we get to do visits, or was that senior year?
Junior year was visits. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had signed by the end of my junior year.
Oh, okay.
And that was nice. That was nice to kind of get the pressure off.
Mm-hmm.
It was stressful for a long time. I guess in a good way, because where do I go? I think I got 40 different colleges asking for me to come. Took some trips, and finally, it was just like, well, University of Oregon. That's at the time and still now.
Yeah.
When you used to
Track
say,
Mecca.
It's like the Notre Dame of football.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore, but for Notre Dame, but
Yeah.
but it's like that was the place you went, and so it's like, wow, I got the opportunity to do that. It's fairly close to home. It's Hayward Field.
Yeah.
Did age group track meets there, and it was just like, let's do it. And
was there any? So we talked a little bit about like when I went on my visits. Like I went and saw one team, and they weren't a team. They didn't like each other. The coach had just started, and he was very clear that if he had a better offer, he was going to leave. And like it wasn't a functional environment. And then I went to another school that I wasn't really excited about, but they were going to pay for me to come eat for 2 days. So I was really excited about those visits, right? And they had a great team. Everybody liked each other. They all hung out together. The coach was really nice. Did you have any like surprises on your sports visits that were like, oh, this is something worth keeping an eye out for, or something that seemed like it wasn't what you were interested in? Or
I think you can only choose 5 schools to go to for so it was like, well, and this was before I think I was really actually going to go to Oregon, or thinking about going to Oregon. Went to University of Texas, Madison, Wisconsin, Kansas State, UCLA, and UW, because those were kind of the top track schools at the time. And every single place was so different.
Yeah.
Austin, Texas is really cool looking, but it's in Texas, and you're a kid from Shelton, and the culture is different. The people were different. You always have a good time on your recruiting visits.
Yeah. They're very sure that you have fun.
Yeah. Is this going to be edited? No, but
you gotta. It's you almost, and I don't know how you do it as a teenager, but you almost got to look past like what is happening right now and where versus like where am I at? Like you're talking about like what are the personalities of the other people like? Of course, the people that are taking you out are showing you a good time. Like that is their fucking job.
They find a team captain who likes working with kids, and
they give them money to take you out to dinner.
You get to.
There's probably a house party somewhere happening.
Right.
So you get that big old schmooze, and you're just like, this is awesome. But you do realize, it's not going to be what it's going to be like.
Yeah, they're not going to feed you.
Yeah.
You get the other part of it where you tour the facility and then you witness a workout. And it's like, okay, this is more
that part
of
was
the
a lot more
reality.
informative. Yeah.
You sign up and then it's like, all right, and if coach ever catches you in any of those spots again,
exactly,
your scholarship is gone.
Yeah. So you get past that sparkle a little bit pretty quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going to the different colleges. UCLA was actually the one school that wanted me to be a thrower.
Okay.
I was kind of passed on that. Not a single other school wanted me to be just a thrower. It was decathlon by then.
Yeah.
But UCLA, it was Art Venegas down there at the time. He's like, we're gonna bump you up to about 240.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be throwing.
Yeah.
And I can remember so clearly. He put his hand out and he kind of squatted backwards a little bit. He kind of anchored himself. He's like, pull me across the room. And I'm okay. And I started pulling. not knowing like he wants me to pull hard.
Right.
He's like, pull, and so I'm like fighting him, and he's just like kind of fighting back, and he was a pretty strong guy too, and but he's like, okay, you got the power.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. And,
The 62-foot shot didn't convince him, but the
no,
the handshake.
Yeah.
but
The hand-to-hand tug of war.
exactly. It caught me off guard, but it was fun, and it's neat to see what the coaches do to kind of see if you got it or not.
Yeah, because they aren't allowed to have you do workouts. Like I
No.
remember asking. So I had I started training like real seriously like halfway through my junior year, and so when I was like going to those recruiting visits, I was just like starting to get into shape, and I remember they had like record boards up, and they'd have like a broad jump and stuff, and I'd be like, can I try to break any of those, or like do I? And they're like, no, you can't. You're not allowed to touch a weight. You're not allowed to jump. You're not allowed to do anything. And I was like, this is boring.
Yeah. Where's the house party?
But I like that he's like he's got his wrestling instead. He's like, I'm gonna arm wrestle this kid.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Kind of hides it in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so taking all the visiting or the college visits, was super cool, and you kind of get the experience, and you settle on, well, here's where I'm going, and they didn't have big signing days or anything back then, Didn't sit around a table.
The fanfare.
No, it was just my dad was like, okay, sign here, and
Yeah.
we're done.
Yeah.
You didn't have 3 different hats to put
Exactly.
on.
Yeah. So it was just
Live stream it.
quick done at our kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was junior year ends. I know I'm going to Oregon, probably a big relief,
Yeah.
feeling good about it. And, head's getting a little big, not too much, I always try to stay modest about it, but going into senior year, it's just like, what are we going to do? Keep on going. Going to try to go for the 3-peat in the shot. Going to try to just do the events. We ended up doing a decathlon at the end of my senior year. So coming into the state meet, my senior year, I had to slim down. So it was like, I'm going to be a decathlete, so I'm weighing 205, 210. I got to slim down a little bit, so I think we got down to about 195.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of dieting a little bit.
Get back to where there's a fiberglass pole that will actually work.
Exactly. Yeah. So really lean, just ready to go, but still throwing well.
Yeah.
Hitting 60s. Hit 62.9 my senior year.
Yeah. The high school implements are a little more forgiving on body mass.
Yes.
I do remember like during one of my visits, I met a coach, and he was like, "You're Kyle," and I was like, "Yeah." He's like, because I think in high school I weighed 192 pounds or something at my heaviest or something.
Mm-hmm.
Something
and you were
like that.
strong. You were strong in high school.
Yeah, I moved some weight at the end, but I met a coach, and he was like, "I'm going to get you up to 260 pounds, and you're going to crush everybody." He was so excited about it.
Crush yourself too.
Yeah. But I already was too big for any of the poles. There wasn't any except for the steel pole. So
Right.
yeah,
Which is still available.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, going into senior year, I was running hurdles really well. My dad decides, it was halfway through the season, he's like, why don't you try triple jumping and 300 hurdles?
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of my fun stories about just trying a new event and where it went from there. We were in Yakima, I think it was a Holder Relays, my first 300 hurdle race ever.
Uh-huh.
I'd been hurdling for years on the short hurdles.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, how am I supposed to do this? It's like you run as fast as you can towards these hurdles that are spaced farther apart, jump them, hit full speed, and you're good. It's like, cool. So
Great advice.
Right? Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Come out of the blocks, it starts on the back stretch. I'm firing. I hit the first hurdle. Great. I was like, oh, this is fun. Hit the second hurdle. They're spaced, I want to say probably 20 meters apart.
Yeah.
So you got time to build speed in between. So you're really hitting them fast. Come around the corner. The corner's a little different. You start to come around the corner. I think I get my leg up. I catch my toe. Wipe out. Just scrape. Just tumble. It's like, get up. Keep going. I went. Hit the next one. Tumbled. Hit the next one. So 3 in a row, I just wiped out, fell. I've got blood all over my arms, just scraping from the track. But got up, finished in a time good enough to qualify for our leagues and districts. So it's okay. We'll keep going on that. And so
that went well enough. I'll keep
enough.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it turns out I would have loved to do that event if I would have known about it a little more. You know,
Switching a little bit.
It's
a
a
little
fun.
crazy.
It's a fun event.
Yeah.
Just to say a little bit about like different, like a champion's mindset versus somebody like I did not have a champion's mindset. If anything, I had a loser's mindset for most of my life, you know. And the first, maybe I'll say the first week of track freshman year, so I did it as a middle, and I wasn't very good at track, but I enjoyed it. Like I liked the camaraderie. It was raining, and I went to jump over the hurdles, and I jumped the very first hurdle, tripped, fell, and there was a group of like senior girls, track girls around, and they all laughed, and I just stood up and then walked out and then never did track again. You fell over 3 and still had a qualifying time to get you to districts. Like if anybody ever tells you mindset doesn't matter, it matters, man.
Yeah, keep checking forward.
Yeah. I just stood up wet and I was like, that's it.
That's it. Well done.
So moving on there, we go to district qualifying. So I qualify in shot disc, or no, I didn't. Shot disc, 110 hurdles and 300 hurdles for the state meet. So we're going in hot to the state meet, thinking, well, you know, this is going to be a great day. Looking for the three-peat of shot, and then hurdles are looking good. But scheduling, you know, when you're writing a schedule for a track meet, you're not exactly thinking there's going to be a guy running the 110 hurdles and throwing the shot at the same time.
Right.
Back and forth.
You know, so they're happening at the same time on the schedule, and this was at the Lincoln Bowl.
Yeah.
You guys have been in the Lincoln Bowl.
Yeah,
Throwing
yeah.
areas are up top, up a big
So
hill.
you're climbing the hill.
Yeah.
Right.
So we got qualifying for 110 hurdles. I buzzed through the qualifying of 110 hurdles, and basically just kept on running, you know.
Right up to the shot put area.
Changed my shoes, hiked up the hill there, and they had already finished warm-ups. The official, whoever he may be, said, "You don't get warm-ups. Sorry, you're late."
Yeah.
I said I was running the qualifying in hurdles. It's like, sorry, you weren't here.
Yeah.
So it's basically I'm up there, and I'm a very anaerobic guy. You know, so I'm huffing and puffing.
As is true for most power athletes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Legs are still shaking. I've got my throwing shoes on, and I get in for my first throw and just kind of bomb it. Get in for a second throw, kind of bomb it. Was able to pop off like a last throw, like 57 feet for my last throw. One guy had the best throw of his life through like 58.2, ended up winning, you know, and that was like crushing.
Yeah.
And I think it was for the most part so crushing just because of the pressure.
Yeah.
Not that I gave myself, but that everybody was talking like this three-peat, and
Right.
you know, this was supposed to happen, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, there's no supposed tos in sport.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
like that's something as an athlete I think that you got to get your mind around is like if you don't show up,
Yeah.
you know, ready and to participate. In your case, it wasn't even in your control.
Well,
like you either don't run the 110 or, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's hard to understand when you're that age too. Our brains aren't
Yeah.
rolling very well. You know, you've got your own little understanding of what that world is, and you look back on it now, it's like it makes perfect sense, everything that happened.
Right.
But back then you're still that teenager that why didn't I win? I should have won.
Right.
It should have been there, and so that was tough. And I'm not a crier, but I ended up like walking over. My mom was there to watch, and she's just like, "Oh, you did a great job," you know. Of course, the way moms
Sure.
do.
She's proud of you. She doesn't
And
care if you win or not.
I remember my head just going into her shoulder, and I'm just like bawling.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why am I crying so much? It's just like because I wanted that three-peat so bad. I think a lot of people wanted that so bad, and
Right.
it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So that was that. We got one event left,
Yeah.
300 hurdles.
Yeah.
So I'm recovered. It's the end of the track meet, way later in the day, and I'm fired up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm like I want to.
Refocused. You moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, I wasn't the fastest rank coming into there, but I was close enough to where anything could happen. You know, you compete. I got the thing on the back of my shirt on the day. You know, you compete on the day. You're
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
You show up, whether it happens or not. That's what you strive for.
If you could just only trip twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't keep it to 2 trips.
The trip's coming. The trip's coming. Wait for it. So I'm out. I'm out of the blocks. I'm like, this is do or die. This is the last thing I ever do in my high school career, and going. And I fire the backstretch. I come around the corner, and there's just nobody around me. Like I'm leading big time, like almost by a hurdle length. So I'm just like, go, go, go. And my mind is like, you're gonna do it, dude. You're gonna win. You know, screw the shot title. You're gonna win the 300 title instead. going. And anybody who's ever run the 300 hurdles, that last hurdle, when you're burning, when you're tired, the last hurdle looks like it's like 6 feet tall. And you're just like, get over that hurdle. And so I come to that hurdle and clip the tip of my toe, come forward and roll. Like I went down and I actually think I caught myself a couple steps, but then went down, rolled over the finish line. Okay. The Tacoma News Tribune's got this picture of me doing that. Like it was on in the paper the next day of just me just like on my back rolling over the finish line. The guy from O'Day passed me up, and it was like 0.02 seconds or something like that. Like it was photo finished that he won the state title. I got second in that. And yeah, that was the epic trip on that one. Years later, the cool thing, I mean, this was like probably 10 years later, my dad just comes up to me. He's like, well, you remember the guy from O'Day that beat you in the hurdles? I was like, oh yeah.
Hello.
He said, well, that was Nate Burleson,
Oh, damn.
The Seahawk.
Yeah.
Seahawk, he's a broadcaster. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's cool. So that I brag about that sometimes.
Right.
Yeah,
like, almost beat Nate Burleson, but I let him have it.
Yeah.
Wanna-
2/200ths of a second or whatever.
Yeah.
He needed to have some success.
Yeah, he needed to have some success.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, but that was that was a high school career. A lot of meets traveling around, a lot of switching around to different things to finally settle, and then you're off to college.
Yeah. So you were a senior when I was in 8th grade, so we didn't get to compete together. But I did get to hear your dad's version of the the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had told me, that when you were younger, it was just like trying to find something you loved and something you were interested in, and then it kind of turned into being, a throw specialist. And then he told me that one day you guys were at a track meet and you were standing next to Ben Lindsay. And so for anybody who doesn't know who Ben Lindsay is, he was a really successful track athlete. He was a thrower. I think he threw at UW maybe.
Yeah, I did.
And monstrous dude, like 6'8",
big dude.
340 pounds, something. Very, very big guy. He was like, I saw them standing next to each other and I was like, back to decathlete. So what was...
Not quite big enough.
Yeah. So what was like, what was that... Like, what was it like for you to make the choice? Like, did you love shot put and wanted to be a shot putter forever? Did you love decathlete? Like, you said UCLA wanted you to be a thrower. Was there any tug on your heartstring for like just doing one thing or the other?
Yeah. No, I love the throws. I think I'm always going to love the throws. That was always my thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. God, I mean, you're a thrower.
Yeah.
Anybody who's thrown, getting that feeling of a good release or just that yell or just that adrenaline rush of throwing is so cool. It's so fun. But I kind of knew like the success, the probability of success would be more towards decathlete.
Yeah.
Just because I wasn't big. I wasn't huge like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you never know if like, well, did my dad decide for me? Did he somehow convince me? Either way, he was really good at that, like making me think what he thought.
Yeah, so
not in a
thing,
bad way, but he's very, very convincing.
Adding to the lore of John. John was a lawyer and appeals judge for
appellate court.
Yeah, forever. And so
I could never lie to him when I was little.
He makes a pretty convincing argument when he's trying to tell you should be doing something. It's hard to argue with him. And he's a very, very bright and very sharp guy. So you don't even want him to be wrong. Like most of the time.
Right? Yeah, you prove him wrong, he won't talk to you for a long time. But I don't think I was ever able to prove him wrong. But he's very to the point, very smart about the sport. But you couldn't get anything by him.
Yeah,
you couldn't lie to him.
Yeah, and even like it's fantastic to say stuff like, "Oh, you'll come down here. We'll get you to 245. You're gonna be awesome." Like you might move like a slug at 245.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might hate it.
You might not be able to get there.
Well,
Yeah,
the
just
body might not be able to
get
handle
there.
it.
Like, now all of a sudden it's weird. All of a sudden now you're. Not that you didn't get injured, but like now injuries pop up out of nowhere because you're not used to heaving that kind of body weight around. So it's easy to say.
Yeah.
It's something way different to do.
It is a developmental sport, and that's always one of the most interesting things. Another thing that John always was very good at, he had a real eye for talent. Like he could really, like he'd see people and he'd be like, they got a big ceiling, they don't, whatever.
Right.
And but you can't always tell. Like that's you get two people in who are obviously good power athletes. You never know what the ceiling's going to be for them. Like how much training will work and how much they can get bigger and all that kind of stuff. It is always a little bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah. Or what they can handle.
Yeah. Yeah. So
with my dad, a quick
Yeah.
story. You know, just him being always a straightforward, honest type. You know, when I started coaching at the high school, you know, my dad was a coach
Mhm.
for a long time, so it was really cool, like coaching with him and being on that. But then it's like, well, now I gotta keep tabs on my dad so he doesn't get in trouble or he doesn't, you know, like I'm kind of his boss now, which was always weird to start out with, where I'd have to tell him what to do. But he always loved issuing the uniforms.
Yeah.
He was very methodical on like writing the numbers down and everything. And so there was this one year, it was probably 12, 15 years ago. A girl came up and he's, well, what size do you want? She's like, I want a small. And he looks at her. He's like, you're not a small. And she's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you're never going to be a small. I'm going to give you a large. And I didn't know this happened until the complaint that was filed with the school came in about my dad needing sensitivity training and how he can't say that kind of stuff. But I mean, if you know my dad, you know, it's just like very straightforward. You're not a small.
Yeah.
Here's a large. So
Which was probably absolutely factual.
it was probably true.
He's just looking at uniform handing out.
Yep.
Like,
And in the girl's mind, she was being called fat, and,
Right.
and they filed a complaint with the school. And, so ever since then, it's just like, Dad, I don't want to put you through sensitivity training again.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I quit saying that stuff. But it was always a blast, like seeing what, you know, you got that quote on the board, and, you know, seeing what was going to come out of his mouth.
Yeah. So the quote on the board. Have I told the story about the drug dealer on the podcast? I know I've told you.
yeah, I don't know.
Should I
You're
tell it?
looking at the wrong person. My
Yeah.
alpha brain hasn't kicked in
The alpha
yet
brain
today.
has. So today the quote, we always put a quote up. Today's it's pull your head out of your ass and get your shit together, and it's one of John's quotes, and that's from my sophomore year, kind of like mid-season, end of season, my sophomore year. My parents had a really uncomfortable divorce, and police were involved, and we ended up losing our house and everything. You know, it was a whole thing, right? And so I was pretty fresh off of that, like really taken off and not feeling good about life. And I had a buddy who was the school drug dealer who stole Josh's bike at one point.
Yeah,
Not
baby.
cool, man. Not cool. Don't go stealing people's bikes.
I forgive you.
Probably also wasn't cool to steal drugs at a high school. That was probably bad too. But he asked me if I would come to a party, and I was like, I don't really like big groups of people. I got like social anxiety, you know. And he's like, and I don't drink. You know, alcohol was not a fun thing growing up, and he was like, well, it's just gonna be like, I'm changing the names for posterity, but it's just gonna be me and Brittany and Sarah and Ashley, and we're gonna sit around and do acid and listen to Hendrix. And I was like, okay, I'll be there. And so he gave me his address and stuff, and so I showed up late to practice because I was making plans with a drug dealer. And then I was trying to flirt with some girl, but I have no like charisma as a human being, and so it was pretty.
You have hair.
yeah. What's your favorite train? You know, and so John he literally just grabbed me by the shirt and was like, "Come on, we're going." And it's the middle of the team meeting. Like whoever, I don't remember if it was Lauren or Brian were the coach at the time, but they're up there standing. He just yanks me out of the meeting and he pulls me out and he's like, "You're really good at this, and it could pay for you to go wherever you want to go, but you got to pull your head out of your ass and get your shit together."
There you go.
So I didn't go that same night, right? I didn't go to the drug dealer party. I eventually started working out, and you know he was right too. Like I did need to pull my head out of my ass and get my shit together, but yeah, great piece of advice. Pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah, pivotal, straightforward, and you know, it's amazing those moments that come along.
Yeah.
You never realize
Yeah,
what it's going to do for you.
yeah. Well, and as a coach, you know, like you never know. You know, when you're talking to a kid, you never know when what you say is gonna, you know, change the direction, the course of their life. You know.
Yeah, we all as athletes remember those little moments with our coaches, that one little thing that they said to us,
Yeah.
and it sticks.
Yeah.
You know, we adopted the saying. My college coach, his saying was "on the day."
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. Yesterday's gone. You know, tomorrow's not here yet. On the day you compete, and that's a big thing about track and any sport. Like when you were talking about wrestling the other day, you know, and that is competing in the moment on
Right.
the day. There's no solid given on who's going to win. It's like who's got it in that moment.
Yeah.
Like bring it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to teach high school kids that.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
And favorites are favorites,
Mhm.
you know, and favorites might win more times than not, but just like wrestling, they just had a huge upset, you know, and, you know, an Olympic gold medalist lost in his final year.
Yeah.
It's like
It
on the
happens.
day.
Yep.
On the day.
On the day.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Sometimes you run the 110 hurdles.
Yeah. So you went to Oregon. You became a Duck.
So became a Duck. Got there. Overwhelmed, boy. I mean, you know, not just the track part. The track part was the familiar like part, but just being tossed into the big university scene.
Yeah.
I keep saying I'm a small town
Yeah.
Shelton guy. Haven't been many places. People are there for school. In my mind, I was there for track.
Yeah.
You look back on that now, it's like, well,
Probably could have used.
I
a
wish I could have
reframe.
done a little more balance. Because you're saying to yourself, I'm here for track. I'll just get by on school. So
Mhm.
you're not focused on what the best classes are. You're just focused on getting through your classes
I'm going to circle back to that in a minute. I need a piece of
Right.
paper to
Yeah.
write this down. Yeah.
getting to track practice.
Yeah.
But we had fun. I got there, got in the dorm, and here's the difference: is we started right away.
Yeah.
Versus high school. Yeah,
There's no off season.
There's no off season. You're meeting for practice in September, doing a lot of just strength and conditioning things. We're running stairs at Hayward Field. They had, of course, there's a new Hayward Field now, which is amazing. But I miss
Yeah,
the old one.
state-of-the-art,
Yeah,
beautiful
it's
facility.
Did you have access to the lockers right away? Because my favorite part about Chris is we had Chris Smith on a couple episodes
the
ago.
locker story.
He's like his sophomore year, and he's like, I found out there were lockers I could go into.
Can I have one, please? We did get them right away. Fortunately, we had lockers in the Bowerman building, which is off the corner there, and it was cool because you felt like you were getting treated like royalty.
Yeah.
Right.
You tried not to let that get to your head, but you told yourself, "I'm here for track and field, and I'm part of the team." So they want to treat us like that. Cool.
Yeah.
And, you go and get
Not going to be mad
yeah,
about it.
pairs of shoes that you wanted to get, another sweatshirt, and lockers. But anyway, we started training right away, and it was just the decathletes would group up, the jumpers, and we'd do different group sessions of just hard conditioning, get the body ready. Not many events,
Mhm.
just getting yourself ready. They had a kind of a gymnastics and under a pole vault area under Hayward Field, underneath the big grandstand, and I can remember first time in there was a pole vaulter. His name is Piotr Buciarski. I probably said that wrong.
Shout out to Piotr, our favorite Piotr.
We call him Peter, Piotr, or whatever. We'd play with his name a little bit. Super, super awesome guy. One of the top pole vaulters. He was the top pole vaulter at Oregon. And when you look into the pole vault world, when you're really good at pole vaulting, your core strength, your arm, everything, you can control your body no matter what it's doing.
Yeah.
You're a gymnast. You're a super gymnast.
Right.
And they had rope climbs where you're working doing the rope climbs. I think I got halfway up the rope, and dropped down, thinking it was pretty good. He's like, "Oh, let me show you how it's done." And he had an accent. That was a horrible accent. He gets on the rope. He puts his legs straight out in like a V,
Yeah.
and puts like a 10-pound medicine ball in his lap. And he just boop, 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 all the way up to the top of the rope, 30-foot rope. And that's when we were talking a little bit, that's when you get kind of that wake-up call of like, I'm not the best. Everybody's the best here. And then we're all going to be in it together. And there's always somebody better.
Yeah.
So it was humbling being there as a freshman.
I think that's like a really, like, I've heard that same thing from a bunch of people where like they thought like, okay, well, I'll learn this event and then my athleticism will put me over everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, man, you're really scraping pennies,
Yeah.
when you're competing at that level.
You get to that level, everybody's athletic.
Yeah, super athletic.
Everybody's got the knowledge. So it's like, what does it take to get to that next level?
And you really end up having to be like honest with yourself about like, I was really strong and I was really fast. Like compared to the general population, crazy strong and crazy fast. But in that environment, I was not the fastest, not by a long shot, and I wasn't the strongest, not by a long shot. So like to be, you really have to start dialing in your approach to be like, okay, well, I'm a good in-between power person. So like, how do I make my events work for me as that in-between power person?
I think someone like you've always been a really good student of the sport, and hard worker and things like that. So, those are take Kyle's factors. Like what's going to get me going? You know? Everybody's got their different factors of like what's going to make them good. And then you'd observe these Oregon athletes, the ones that were really good. You kind of realize it later in life on, wow, their routines, their discipline, all of that. Like it was on par. It wasn't like, well, I'll go to Carl's Jr. on Friday and have a burger. It doesn't matter. It's like, no. You weren't doing that.
Yeah.
So you'd see those little details that would
not if
separate.
you wanted to hang with Piotr.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were the freaky athletes, but they also worked the hardest, right? We always, like at high school, we see that a lot. Like I'm always battling, like my freakiest freshmen wind up having the worst work ethics.
Right.
And then you have the kids that weren't that great freshman year, but they work themselves into a really nice position. And it's not always, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
Out of the school that we work in, like that happens a lot.
No, it's a lot, and sometimes you find that mix in the middle of those
Right.
kids. But
Somebody's got a little bit of both.
I deal with the coach and track. Some of these kids come in with extreme natural talent, but they don't want to run.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't like working out. They're good enough as they are. So you get that, and then you got these kids that just don't quite have it, but they're just the best workers, and they're so dedicated.
Yeah.
And you want to bring them in to the middle, you know,
Right.
or you want to combine some of them.
Yeah.
And that's when you get the good ones. It's rare.
Mm-hmm.
They come along.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So you get there.
I know
you
we're
start
all
training.
over the board right now.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's fun talking to you guys about
No,
this
this
stuff.
is we've been all over the board. This feels pretty.
We're pretty focused.
Yeah,
We're pretty focused. We're just talking about.
We've
training.
gone way crazier. Than that.
Yeah, you were just talking about like seeing everybody who's really high level and finding people who are really good at stuff. So I know I'm just curious. One of the things that I was most impressed by, like in terms of like your athletic skills, because everybody's got their things that they're really good at. Like you know, my training buddy growing up was Nick Owens, who it was a NCAA. You know, went to the NCAA championships as a thrower.
Yeah.
Right. He had a ability to move that was just phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
he high jumped. He looked like he'd been high jumping for 15 years. You know, if he swung a golf clubs, he looked like he should be at the majors. His jump shot was beautiful. He did cross country to try to lose some weight one year, and he would get like the coaches would pull him aside and ask him like, whose coach is this hill for him? You know, like he just had a real gift for movement, like
Yeah.
more probably than anybody I've ever met. In my eyes, you were super springy. Like you had like that combination of like power and like you know, just, you know, you could get out of your positions really well, like better than pretty much anybody that I've ever seen. So like when you went to Oregon, did you find people who were like, you know, like they took that like kind of elastic power side of the sport that you were good at, and you felt like, oh no, I need to get a lot better at this?
Yeah, you know, you did. You'd see guys come in from across the country who were in my situation. Oh, they were the best in the state, and all of a sudden, and they'd come in. They were the best in their state, and maybe they had a little more of that spring or something. They had more than you on that. So it was, you saw it, yeah.
So what was the thing that you ended up building on? So like as a decathlete, right, you're trying to score points. So did you take the approach of like, I'm going to try to get a lot better at the mile? Like, did you try to get better at the things that you were the weakest at? Or did you try to like lean into that like volition and power and stuff and see if you could tear extra points doing those events?
From what I experienced with you know, this is the first time I had been into full decathlon training. I tried one, you know, after my senior year, but you just do it. But then you actually have a decathlon coach who, and for the first time, you realize what's important in the decathlon. Running the hurdles, being able to pole vault, not being a 10-foot shot putter.
Right.
Because you get some of these guys who are just like monster athletes that come in, I'm going to be a decathlete, and they can't throw implements worth a damn. And then you get other guys who are really good at running distance, but they're slow sprinters. So you trained as a hurdler and a sprinter and a pole vaulter, basically. Because, I mean, you take those three things, and that's like the ultimate.
Right.
You're an athlete.
Right.
And then if you knew how to throw and you got one up on a guy, then you learn how to throw. But most of these guys were strong enough and athletic enough to throw. But the other problem is when you get to college, you get the bigger implements, 16-pound shot, 2-gate disc. Those are hard.
Yeah, that 16-pound shot will pull you apart.
That was hard for me. You know,
Yeah.
coming in and throwing almost 63 feet in high school. I was able to throw far because I could snap that 12-pound out, you know, like off the fingertips, just snap it.
Yeah.
You know, there's no snapping with the 16-pound
Yeah.
unless you're
the spring paid off with the 12.
unless you are a big-time thrower, a pure thrower.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think I dropped about 10 feet, and 53 was the best I ever got with the 16. But for a guy like me to feel that, you know, it's got to feel bad for some of the other decathletes who don't have a whole lot of throwing experience, because most decathletes do not come in as a thrower or anything like that. So they say, I'm a decathlete. Coach says, okay, we're going to teach you how to throw. And they get by.
Yeah.
But it takes that little something.
Well, and, you know, out of the decathlete events, right, a lot of them you could probably get pretty proficient in a short period of time, just in terms of, like, adopting the skill.
Yeah.
But the high jump, triple jump, they're a little harder to learn. And then the pole vault, shot put, discus, significantly harder to learn, right? So having experience in those coming in is probably a huge.
That was a huge advantage.
Yeah.
Being able to pole
Pole vault's almost unfair to put in there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like all the other ones are like things that resemble almost something you would do in childhood.
Yeah.
And then there's pole vault.
The pole vault. I mean, I was watching the
specialized.
episode with you guys and Chris Smith, and just the way you talk. Yeah, I'm gonna jam this pole into the hole and fling myself in the air. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're not a track person, track people talk about the hammer and the pole vault as being the things that are going to take, they're just hard.
They're technical. They're so technical.
So demanding. And so if you want to be any good at them, and not only are they hard, but they're wildly unintuitive.
Yeah.
The pole vault, you got to get upside down. The hammer happens backwards.
Right.
And so you don't see where you're going when you throw the hammer and you're spinning 60 miles an hour.
Exactly. Well, they're the two most unforgiving events also.
Mm-hmm.
You make a mistake and, some of my favorite things to watch is hammer bloopers.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll show you before we go, but I got a hammer I broke.
Ooh. The one that split in half?
Yeah.
I heard about
Bremerton.
that.
Yeah. It's probably your dad's. He paid for it, I'm sure.
Probably. We got him hanging in our garage. Quick side story too, though. But I think it was my senior year, junior maybe, when Dylan Armstrong came to the Shelton High. Not knowing Dylan Armstrong, he's Canada's best thrower. He was the national record holder.
Yeah, North American record holder at one point, I think, for the hammer, and he went on to the Olympics, bronze medalist in the shot put.
Transitioning to shot put. So this guy, he's a senior in high school and just men among boys. My dad's telling me about it. Well, he's coming in. He's going to throw the hammer. We just got to make sure there's enough room for him to land. It's like, well, how far is he throwing? And he was like a 240-foot hammer thrower at the time, I think.
241 and change.
And so at Shelton, you guys talked about before, you hold the hammer meets early in the morning or when nobody's around, because Dylan was over there and he popped one and it came all the way to the pole vault, which the pole vault's right in front of the stadium, bounced off the pole vault runway and ricocheted into the stadium, basically.
Yeah.
And there's about 10 people there. We were all aware of it, but our jaws just dropped. And, I think that was a 230-foot throw that he did. But to realize that there's people out there doing that kind of stuff, pretty amazing. Anyway, that was my side hammer.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Hammer tangent.
Yeah. It's my favorite event.
I know it is. It's an awesome event. Doesn't get the recognition it deserves, like on the world level.
It does have that problem of if people aren't paying attention, somebody will die. So it is easy enough to run it safely. You just do it early, and
it's just like a pole vault. Hey, let's put this big ball on the end of this string.
Yeah.
Or wire.
Yeah,
see how fast you can get spinning around until you chaotically release it.
Yeah, we're gonna find
this one wins.
We're gonna find the strongest, fastest kids we can, and we're gonna have them huck this steel ball 240.
It would almost be better if there was no cage and you measured just any direction. It doesn't matter which way it goes.
You just get 300 feet away and they just go do it.
Yeah, it'd be a big field.
700 feet on either side, just for a little buffer. Yeah.
All right.
So
we'll get back to
back to sport, because you had some defining moments in your college career.
Yeah, it was a bumpy career, and it didn't last, of course, as long as I wanted it to be. I am glad that I did not go to UCLA and become a thrower, because I would have been injured probably right off the bat. My body just the orthopedic surgeon who put me back together after these injuries I'll talk about just said, like, your muscles are just strong.
Yeah.
And tight, intense, and your soft tissue just tore itself apart. Tendons, ligaments, muscles were fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever pulled a muscle in my life, but everything else snapped.
Yeah.
So it was like that. My body just wasn't ready to handle it. So going through freshman year, having a really good year. I got homesick a lot. So I came home a lot. Yeah, no, I mean, it was just like, this is fun, but I really miss home. I mean, I just love being home.
Yeah.
Love being in this area, and I'd never been away from home that long before. So it's coming home a lot, but still getting the training in, doing it. We started going to indoor meets, which is a fun new experience. I mean, we did a couple indoor meets in high school, Simplot games.
Yeah.
UW used to have it indoor. But this was like, hey, we're flying to Iowa.
Yeah.
Because it snows all the time there, but they have this huge indoor facility.
Right.
Or Flagstaff, Arizona, or things like that. And that was fun. It was the first time the team was together. We're traveling together. We realized what it's like to travel with a team that has money. I mean, it's just like, all right, everybody's in their Oregon gear. We're all on the plane together. Here's your meal ticket. We're taking you out to dinner tonight. That was just cool.
Uh-huh.
I was just like, this is the life.
Yeah.
But then there's you got to produce. You got to compete. You're not just here to have fun. You haven't like punched your ticket and you're good.
I always
You
felt
got to
like
start performing.
Right.
I always felt like traveling home was a lot of fun.
Because it's over.
Yeah.
You're either sulking or celebrating.
Yeah.
But we're getting in. We're having events. I'm doing a decent job. They had us running short hurdles. The decathletes would long jump and throw, and just kind of get every little aspect in to practice for the season. And you're making really good friends. We have the funny story of our friend Terry. He was a hurdler from L.A. He had never been out of L.A. before until he flew to Oregon to be on the track team.
Uh-huh.
So he had never been below L.A. weather.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
And so we landed in Iowa, and it was 11 degrees outside, and he was just like, no, he's
Staying on the plane.
he wouldn't come out of the airport. We had to literally drag him out of the airport because he did not want to feel that cold. And to this day, and we always joke about that. Just Terry doesn't like the cold.
Yeah.
So anyway, indoor season, that was all fun. You're getting ready for the big outdoor season. Having a home meet. My first home meet at Hayward Field, as an Oregon Duck, was just incredible. It's something you don't prepare for. Even when you're there on the team, you don't know what it's going to be like.
When the stadium's full and
there's 20,000 people cheering you on who know who your name is.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible. You're just like, wow. And you're in. I knew a good history of Oregon, through my dad. My dad's just like the history buff of everything track and field. So of course, I had learned so much about University of Oregon and all that stuff. And just to be on that field and be like, oh, cool, I've got a Duck uniform on.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it. So we're competing. We're having a really good freshman year. Come to the Pac-10s. I had qualified decathlon Pac-10s. Backtrack a little bit. We went to the Texas Relays. It was supposed to be my first decathlon as a college athlete. I got food poisoning the night before.
That happened to me. I didn't tell anybody. I was really bad. I was an uncoachable athlete. I really was. I was a giant pain in the ass. But we went to Golden West. And we stopped at an all-you-can-eat buffet for breakfast, and then we went to throw, and I was so sick.
Oh.
I think I ran away to throw up or do whatever in the porta potties there 12 times during the competition.
Oh man!
But I didn't tell anybody.
You can't keep the throwers away from the buffet.
That's
part of the travel.
Yeah, I think I ate 12 pounds of bacon at that Golden West Corral or whatever it was. It was a bad idea.
Loading for thrower stuff.
Yeah.
But I got food poisoning the night that I woke up in the middle of the night. I couldn't swallow anything, getting dehydrated. We're in Texas. You're supposed to be doing a 2-day decathlon. And coach is just like, let's pull through, see if we can do it. So, but it was a disastrous meet. Ran the 100, felt like crap. Long jump, felt like crap. Fell over twice in the shot put because I was so dizzy. Ended up triple fouling in the shot put. If you know anything about decathlon, a triple foul or a no height, you're done.
Yeah,
right.
You're not going to get points to compete.
You get 0 points and you're out. You're missing. You're doing 9 events versus 10 basically. Yeah. So triple foul.
Got to do real good to make it up.
Pull through the high jump barely, and then the 400 meters pass out on the finish line. And coach is just like, we're done.
Yeah. No mile.
Day two's not.
Day
two's not coming. And so that was my first college decathlon I competed in. So we come back and do the regular season meets. Coming into Pac-10, I was able to qualify for Pac-10 championships. For decathlon, you don't have to post up a score.
Okay.
Your team can put you in because I think each team can represent. Anyway, having a great meet. Everything's coming together. It's what I'm supposed to be doing. Here comes the first injury of the career. Javelin is the second to last event. I'm en route to score in over 7,000 points, which probably would have qualified me for NCAAs that year. First throw in the javelin, come a little bit low, feel a big pop in my elbow.
Yeah.
Didn't hurt so much, but popped. The javelin kind of floated out, landed at about 100 feet, and that's not many points in a decathlon. So it's like, oh gosh, that really, really hurt. I got the trainer to kind of wrap it up and went to try to toss another one out there, and same thing. Like, I mean, I could feel that my elbow shift backwards. So ended up tearing so I finished off the meet with a 100-foot javelin throw. Not many, but killed my score.
Yeah.
You know, and then jogged with my arm like wrapped to my body, jogged the 1500 the best I could, and you know, ended up not a good score, like 6,500 points maybe. But so then I figured it, you know, of course, go get the MRI and they check you out. I tore my ulnar collateral ligament, which is the surgery you get for the, you know, the Tommy John surgery. So that was the end of the freshman year. Went home for the summer. University hooked me up with a surgeon, and they, you know, fixed my elbow.
Yeah.
They took a tendon out of my wrist and patched it into my elbow. Had to redshirt the next year to recover.
Right.
Still got to compete. Did a really good rehab on the arm. I always compare it to, you remember the movie The Rookie, where the kid breaks his arm, and they're like, oh, the tendon's healed a little tight.
Yeah.
And he just rockets it. And so I come back, and I've never been a good javelin thrower. Never was able to throw a baseball well or anything like that. But was coming back like throwing like 170, you know, like easy. It was like, cool, we're on the right track, we're going. And
I feel like there's a takeaway. I've had that same experience with knee injuries and stuff, where like some of my biggest lifts or biggest jumps were on the back end of doing a rehab thing.
Yeah.
No potentiation, no intense training.
Well, the rehab makes you actually take care of yourself a little better.
Yeah,
and
I
get
feel
stronger.
like there's a takeaway there about like part of your training should probably be like making sure that you've got those long range of motions and different loading schemes and all that kind of stuff like that. Really,
I mean, in the world of training, like two words that I never heard, like, and we have, you know, in our eyes at least, like a Hall of Fame level strength coach, coached all of us, right, and coach you. Like words I never really heard was like prehab, or like, you know, like deep loaded range of motion. You know, so like even in just the last few years, I feel like both of those have really taken off, like at least at the base level. So like there's a lot of times where we probably, like you said, like your muscles were fine. You just, and we talk about for you all the time is like becoming so strong that you're just like blowing tendons off the bone. Like,
Yeah, I mean, you just put a V8 engine in a go-kart.
But you know, just you got to be a smart athlete.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, you do. I mean, I'm strongly recommending right now that, you know, if you want to have a long career as a javelin thrower, discus thrower, shot putter, whatever, find out what the prehab and the rehab stuff is. Load it in your workout every once in a while, you know?
Get the motion, start slow.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of it's that patterning, right? Because you can javelin without putting a ton of tension on that ligament. You just have to be sure that you're moving in the right plane and everything.
But the moment your full body, you know, like when you're a thrower and, when your full body transitions from your feet to your release, and all that strength you've ever developed for yourself is in that one little point. That's gonna rip or tear if you're not ready. It's a lot of power. You know, speaking of strength coaches, you know, of course, Coach U is just awesome. I credit a lot of success to him and what happened in his weight room. It was cool when we got to Oregon. We had our head strength coach there, Jimmy Radcliffe. He still does seminars, and I'm pretty sure he still works at Oregon. Sorry, Oregon people, if I don't know that. Had the same philosophies as Coach U, you know, like that motion. Like we went into the weight room for our first couple sessions, and we were not allowed to lift heavy. Everything was range of motion, everything, and even it was light. We spent weeks doing that before he even let us do anything heavy. And I think that really gave a boost to people. But he was such a cool guy. He was tiny, super athletic. We called him Mini Schwarzenegger because he looked kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Getting paid lots of money from the university, but he'd ride like this rickety old 10-speed bike to the training center. But anyway, cool guy. If anybody ever has a chance to look up his stuff or meet him, he's really super cool guy.
So we got some takeaways there. Long ranges of motion, pattern movements. You know, make them work for you, not against you.
Yeah, get strong first and flexible.
So anyway, you came back from rehab. And
came back from rehab, red shirt in a year. So red shirt, you know, it means you don't travel with the team, but you compete with them. You got to wear your own little uniform. Competing at all the home meets, feeling good, feeling strong, and basically just get through that year, injury free. You know, nothing big. Just maintaining the training. Coming into, so it would be my third year there. You know, it was supposed to be my junior year, but it's sophomore year, competitive wise. Feeling great. Like training is going awesome. Pole vault's good. I was popping over like 17 feet in practice, just easy as can be. So we go to the Reno Pole Vault Summit,
Okay.
which nobody knows about this. It's basically all the pole vaulters in the country get together and just geek out, and they set up a bunch of runways and, in this huge convention center inside. And so, they got the elite vaulters, they've got the high school vaulters and college, all the divisions.
Mm-hmm.
So we're there. I've been plagued like with a little bit of the tendonitis in my knee. That's what stopped me pole vaulting my freshman year.
Yeah.
And it would just hurt me all the time, just pain. It was hard to jump. I actually switched to my right leg for long jump
For your
in
takeoff
college.
and stuff,
yeah,
yeah.
which is something I never thought I could do, but it happened.
Yeah.
And so we're warming up. This is like in January of 2002, I believe. Yeah. Taking warm-up jumps. I'm ready to go over my first bar, and I'm firing down the runway, just going for it. I'm strong. I'm weighing like 200 pounds, I think, of just like solid muscle.
Uh-huh.
And I go and I plant. You stick that plant as hard as you can. And like Chris was saying, it's a long jump with a pole.
Yeah.
And so you hit that long jump takeoff. As soon as I hit that long jump takeoff, it's when my knee just decided, like, we're done. Like,
I've had enough.
it's over. And so my patellar tendon just snapped, like, in half.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't feel it, but when you're trying to plant and elevate and your knee snaps and your quad muscle gets cut off from, your lower leg, you don't go anywhere except for straight forward.
Straightforward.
Luckily, I held onto that pole.
Yeah.
I think I went almost tip to tip.
Yeah.
And that pole's going, and I'm still holding on, thinking, if I let go, it's going to snap, or I don't know what I was thinking because it happened so quick. Pole snaps,
Mm-hmm.
Usually when a pole breaks, because it's overloaded, it breaks into like 3 pieces.
Yeah.
So there's pieces of pole flying inside this convention center. The plug on the pole, which is the end rubber piece, that got zinged off and hit the back wall, which was like 200 feet away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of power in those poles when you're loaded and when it releases in the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about
Things
just
happen.
the physics of it, right? You
Yeah.
got a 200-pound guy moving at 25 miles an hour or whatever,
Yeah.
and then stopping it with the elasticity of a pole. It's
Yeah.
a lot of force.
Bad things seem to happen.
Yeah.
And so, pole breaks, I kind of do this little backflip into the plant box area. And so I'm laying there, and, it takes a second or two to kind of just think, like, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really feel the pain of it,
Right.
but it happened. And I looked down, and my quad muscle was just bundled up, like, almost to my hip.
Uh-huh.
And my teammate, Jason, he pops over. He's like, "Are you okay?" And the only thing I remember of that is just saying, "I think my effing kneecap just fell off." Like, that's all I could think of saying, because it wasn't there. Like, it wasn't
Right.
there
Right.
where
Right.
it's supposed to be in the knee.
Scooching a little bit, you're drifting. Sorry.
And then, these chairs are too comfortable. And so that was that. They bring in the paramedics and brace up the knee, and my dad's there. Kathy was there too,
Uh-huh.
watching. Kathy was actually sitting behind the mats, and she had a video camera.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was the one jump where she like set the video camera down and didn't film anything, and this is back when it was a pretty big video
Yeah,
camera.
yeah, yeah. They're
Nobody had cell
substantial.
phones or anything like
Yeah.
that. So I had spent years like searching to see if anybody there had
Captured it.
captured it, which they didn't. So anyway, that was wow, this is big time. Like,
Mhm.
I get carted off in an ambulance to the hospital. They shoot me up with morphine, which is my first experience with morphine in my life.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of laying there, and they fly me home. I think it was 2 days later, went in for surgery because they had to go pretty quick so the tendon didn't shrink up.
Right.
So they ended up wiring my knee all back together. They wired the kneecap down. They patched the tendon back together, and it was basically a year of rehab,
Mhm.
to get rolling again. And I got competing again a little bit, maybe like 3 weeks in the track season. Was trying, but it was just like those moments of like, I can't do it. Like,
Right.
the knee is weak, my leg atrophied a little bit, and things just couldn't happen, to the level that you had spent years
Right.
building on.
Yeah, yeah.
And, so then that's when all the conversations started about medical leave and things like that. And
Mhm.
finally, when you hit the business side of it, finally the coaches were just like, "Sorry, we're done. We're going to give you like a year medical scholarship to finish up school."
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Track was done. It
Yeah.
was, it was a hard thing to spend all of those years doing it, and it consumed your life, and then to have like that snap
Uh-huh.
of of you're done. And so that was a rough senior year. Well, call it a senior year, you know, because I'm at this place that I came to do track, but I'm not doing track.
Right.
And, you know, it's just like I effing hate this place. Like, you know, I did not do well at school. Ended up leaving without graduating.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because earlier you said, I'm here for track. So I was going to ask, how did it end up for you after, you know,
it ended up bitter. I mean, I came home, I had one trimester left to graduate, and I was just like, screw it. Like, you know, it's a hard thing to process when you're 22 years old and, you know, thinking that this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Like your whole life.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, I had to, you know, like my career ended because of injury. You know, I didn't make it as far as you did, obviously, right? But I mentioned I started training late. You know, it was like my junior year that I started really training. And in the time between when our like summer season ended and when we were going to start doing our indoor stuff, all of my stuff just exploded. Like I was so excited about competing. I was like, I'm going to take all of Doug's records because fuck him and, you know, whatever. Right. And then I got hurt, and I got hurt right before the season started, and it was the end of it. And I was super depressed for years. Yeah. Like probably 2 or 3 years.
It's something that feels like it's out of your control. Like you know, you get something taken away from you.
Yeah.
You want it back. But you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really, really hard, you know. Did you like? I mean, I was kind of like listless in life. Like I had a hard time like figuring out what kind of job I wanted to do or whatever. Like, did you feel the same way?
I came home. I moved in. My mom was like, "You can live in our, you know, rec room for a while." And then I ended up moving back into my dad's house, you know, and got a job working construction. And it was just like, I don't know how to start over, you know, because the path that I was going to take, whether it was going to be, I didn't know if I was going to be a professional track or not, but I thought I was just going to kind of continue that for a while, 5 or 6
It was certainly
years.
in the ballpark of reality, right?
Yeah.
Like it's something that could have happened.
So you're all of a sudden trying to figure out, well, what's my purpose? Because it's dark. It gets dark, you know. I mean, I didn't do anything stupid but it was just like, I'm home. I've got a job. I'm working construction. I'm tired. And that's all I've got going for me.
Right.
Yeah. And then, but it quickly happened. Like a year later, I get a call from Bill Hicks, who's our athletic director at Shelton at the time. He's just like, I need a pole vault coach. I'm thinking like, fuck this place. You know, I didn't want anything to do with track and field.
Yeah.
Like, I was done. I would already like passed it in my head, and it was just like, and that was a hard thing to do too, because, you know, my dad's still a fan. He's still coaching. I'm just like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't know if I talked to my dad much that year, you know. We always had a good relationship, but it was just like, I'm not hanging out with you, or we're not talking track, or our thing was we were always at a track meet together.
Yeah, it's one of his passions, right? So if you know that, then it's hard.
Yeah, so it was like that year goes by, and it's like, man, I haven't seen my dad very much.
It's kind of like if you quit smoking crack, you don't want to hang out with your
exactly. It's like I miss my dealer a little.
It's exactly the same.
So I get the call from Bill Hicks, and I molded over for a little while, and I don't know who's told me to do it, but somebody said, just take it, just do it, you know. And I wish I could remember who said it, because I took that job, and that was the year Chris Smith, that was Chris's senior year.
Oh yeah, and he needed somebody, so it was
he
good
needed
that you showed
somebody. I got to correct him though. I did not volunteer. I actually got paid for coaching him. So
I mean, we've all been paid for coaching. It might as well be volunteer.
But you know, the pain in the ass that Chris was, they should have paid me more. But I love Chris. He's and then, you know, Coach Chris and Christy did state meet. It was like that was pretty fun.
Yeah,
you know,
pretty good group of kids to work with. Christy's great. Chris is great.
Oh, it was a good thing to walk into. I mean, they were there for me, like right there, and it was just like, let's do it. You guys have the skills. Let me tell you some of the stuff I just learned coming fresh off of college,
right?
As a pole vaulter and decathlete, and so let's go. And it was great. I wish I would have had more time with them, you know, just in one senior year. And so then it was like, well, I'm coaching. Next year, Daryl White steps down. They're like, we need a head coach. Hired me as head coach. I didn't know how to be a head coach, you know. Of course, I'm asking. You got a lot of good people around Shelton that are giving me advice on like how to be a good head coach. And so, you know, that was 21 years ago. This is I'm celebrating 21 years as head coach now at Shelton, which is weird.
Yeah, you know, I should have had that in the intro, really, because that's a pretty significant commitment to the community. A lot of kids that you can help, and
you know, you're looking through all the kids that you've gone through, and you know, it blurs together a lot in your mind in a good way. You're just like, oh man, that was a cool kid. It's like, well, that was 18 years ago. It's like, shoot. And then you run it into the athletes. Here's my kids. You know, I'm in my late 30s right now.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. But that's the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like not only you're talking about like the service to the community, but you're also handling. I know there's people that have helped out with the event, but like you're also then the head of essentially like the Shelton Invite, which is a very large, like very
Long
proud thing in our community. Like,
yeah. Do you guys want to get into the invite a little bit? Or?
I'm doing it this year.
Huh? No, I mean like right now.
Oh, right now.
Like chat about it.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the Shelton Invite?
Oh, yeah.
Not do you want to compete? He's like, I can get you in, man.
I could get you in if you wanted to. So.
We'll just dye all the gray and
Yeah.
and shave the beard and just pretend that 260-pound guy is a high schooler again. No. Yeah, let's talk about the meet. Why not?
Yeah. Shelton Invitational. I mean, it's the longest running track and field invitational in Washington State. This is the 65th year this year. Started by Coach Son, Coach Brickert, and the older ones, you know. It's been an incredible meet. I mean, I competed in it when I was in high school, saw how big it was, and then being involved in the behind the scenes now is really cool. And of course, you know, Mike Fox and Brian Brickert for the longest time were the co-meet directors. They did an awesome job. So many things got done that you never realized got done, and you know, both of them retired last year. So last year, my wife and I, you know, for me, my role was always get the facilities ready, get this place looking good, you know, get our athletes going. It was busy, but those other guys really handled the
event.
logistics of the event. I'd have a little bit to do with it, you know, the past 10 years or so. But this last year, so my wife, Sarah, she coaches also for the Shelton team. She's super good at organization and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not that great at. So we took over. We're like co-meet directors right now. So 100% of everything just comes through us, and it is nuts, to say the least, to get this event rolling. You know, we got super support from our athletic director. He does a lot on that. But yeah, it's a huge meet. it's hard to
it's a great
say anything
experience.
bad about it. It's a great experience for athletes. You always it's always been touted as like an athlete friendly meet, to where we're not in here just doing the rules. It's like we're bringing you in, we're introducing you in front of the crowd, we're making you feel special. We got a big award stand, we got good awards for you. It's just trying to be just like a first class meet that some of these kids don't see.
Yeah. Well, and I've helped out judging there for like the last 15 years or whatever.
Tons.
And it's always, you know, we're always checking in. We're like, you know, you guys warm up till you're ready, and then we're going to start. And then, you know, we just run the meet. You know, we run the meet for the kids because that's what we're doing. That's
it's
what we're
for
there
the kids.
Right?
We have the officials meeting at the beginning and said, we're not here to disqualify. So don't look for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Give these kids a good experience.
A shoelace hitting the toe board or whatever.
Exactly.
If they're running the hurdles and shot put, just allow them to take their warm up
let
throws.
them catch their breath. Before.
I mean, just pause for a second. Let them. One of my favorite things about the Shelton Invite is that we live in a part of the world where we get weather, and it's always just bipolar weather for the Shelton Invite.
Oh, there's never been it's usually generally nice. It's either pissing down rain or sunny and nice.
Yeah.
And you never know.
Both in the same meet.
The weather report sometimes lies, and it becomes awful. You know, and then you switch modes. You're like kind of the survival mode of it. Let's get this meet going in the rain.
Yeah.
And you know, we got the tents up. We got really cool tents that we bought, you know, in honor of Bill Brickert a while ago. So there's canopy tents all over the field. It's like, well, it's raining. We got to get the sides out and put the sides on, you know, versus if it's sunny out.
Right.
A little bit of shade, but then everybody's having a good time. So yeah, it adapts.
Yeah.
Or we adapt.
It's been a great meet. In the, you know, 20 some odd years, 25 odd years that you've been associated with the Shelton Invite, have you seen any super freaky things besides having Dylan down to throw the hammer?
Oh man, I know I have. I could think of it on the top of my head.
Yeah, that's one I should have primed you with ahead of
Well,
time.
as you're thinking that, I was just thinking the same thing. I wonder, like, not really a way to know this, but like, what was like the most talented athlete? Like you were talking about, like Nate Burleson, like
well,
who's come through that meet that you're like,
that'd be pretty fun.
Holy crap, that guy ran at the
If you look at the meet records, you know, the meet record for the shot put 69.11. Vince Goldsmith, he's our state record holder.
Yeah.
400 meters, Darryl Robinson.
Yeah.
You know, state record holder in the 400. Did that just get broken? I don't know. and they all did that. They all ran comparable times or through those distances at Shelton Invitational.
Mhm.
You know, that was the meet to come to, because there was no divisions.
Yeah.
You know, state meet, you know, you had 2A, 3A. So
Well,
you
state
could say
meets can always state meet. I always liked invitationals more than like state meets
Mhm.
because state meets.
everybody's together.
Yeah, state meets. You might have the top 3 guys in one league or something,
Mhm.
and so somebody doesn't. I mean, Chris talked about that. You know, he was the number 3 guy, and he still would have placed at state, and
Right.
he didn't get to go because they didn't want to vote one of their guys out.
That's a challenge. These kids, everybody does it. They go through the rabbit hole of what ifs. Well,
Uh-huh.
if I was in that district, I would have made it.
Uh-huh.
Or if I was here, I would have made it. And, you know, so things like the Shelton Invitational is like, these are our top people, you know,
Yeah.
and for the longest time, it was the top people in the
Mhm.
state. It drifts in and out of being that anymore, but you could compare yourself straight across the board
Yep.
and compete. You know,
Yep.
that's what kids miss is they don't get to compete against each other, the top
Yeah.
level kids.
Yeah, and
Right.
it was crazy because the invitational sometimes you'll see somebody in 2nd or 3rd place, and then they're not at state, and you're like, "Why
Mhm.
are you not at state? Like, you know, like what happened there?"
Right.
You know, and it's just those, you know, divisional things.
Yeah. So Shelton Invite's awesome. I mean, we're already working on getting it together now, and of course it's like, oh crap, it's like 3 weeks away.
Mhm.
You know, so scrambling.
Yeah, as this comes out, when this comes out, it will be 3 days away.
Yeah.
So you have no time.
No time.
Yeah, it's in
okay,
3
so
days.
I gotta go. We gotta get pizzas ordered, and but yeah, you forgot what that.
Yeah,
joke.
I mean, if you're
Yeah.
a local person and you haven't been out there, or you haven't been out there in a while, like you should definitely come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
come-
and we have
come
so many
watch.
local volunteers that come. I mean, it's amazing. We probably have 110 officials and volunteers that come out and help make that meet function.
Yeah.
And it's people from all over Shelton, Olympia area. You know, it's like the primo gathering of like the track world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool day.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Okay, so I got a question for you. I got to go back to before we got off because I want to talk about it. But what is your advice? Because I know I was super myopic about doing track. Sounds like you were super myopic about doing track.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking to a kid or somebody's listening, or if there's a parent listening who's got a kid who's super myopic about doing track, what's your conversation for them about, you know, like setting goals for after they're done with sport? Or like, is that something that you think about a lot? Do you have that conversation a lot? Because I would really like it if kids who were bought in, I got a lot of great things out of doing sport. Like I don't have any regrets about the way that it panned out or whatever, even though I never got to go be a monster. But I do think a lot when I see people who are really into it. I'm like, what are you doing after this?
Yeah.
You know, like trying to put that bug in the air. Like if you go to college, they're like, okay, well, this college has the best track program. It's like, well, that's great. What do you want to study? Like, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, like, are you going to go, do they have a botany program? And that's really what you love. You love botany and you want to be a botanist, you know?
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for people who are, you know, in that zone?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to talk about with kids because sometimes it comes off as you saying, well, you're not good enough.
You being dismissive.
So you need
Right.
you need a backup plan. But, you know, experienced it for myself that, yeah, things can go south pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So find an interest. Track is not everything. The sport's not everything. You look at the rare number of people who become pro athletes. It's a hard thing to make kids realize that.
Yeah.
And so the advice is, find an interest afterward. Go to a small. You don't have to be D1. You don't have to. You know, there's this dream of like I've got to be D1 like right away. It doesn't happen for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people are lucky to be able to do that. But just like with you guys chatting with Colton Power the other day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Colton in high school, I'd say the first, you know, sophomore year with him, it was just like, it's just Colton.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a decent athlete, but
Yeah.
you don't envision him going on to reach the level that he did.
Yeah.
He was a
Yeah.
very good Shelton athlete,
Mm-hmm.
but I was still very surprised. Like
Mhm.
that's not where I didn't see that trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Like that
Right.
was-
Well, and to see that he went to community college
Right.
Yes.
and then stepped up,
That's
you know,
that was the big thing.
that's huge. That happens to more people than I think realize. You hear about the guys who pop off to D1 right away, but I think, you know, backtracking to the advice you give is like, be okay with taking those small steps.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have success right away. You don't have to be that blue chip
Yeah.
coming out of high school because there are so many successful people who ended up in D1, who ended up professional athletes that went to junior college, went to, you know,
Yeah. It is developmental.
it's all developmental.
Yeah.
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 So have patience. Don't want that. Don't strive for that success like right away.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, if you're just looking for that, you're looking for the wrong thing. You know?
Yeah.
You're looking for a journey. You're looking for the work ethic.
Well, and it does have a ceiling. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like even if, you know, like let's say that you had a couple, you know, your last 2 seasons were real successful and you decided to pursue the post-collegiate thing and you picked up some sponsors and you traveled the world and you qualified for an Olympics and all the fun stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many years can you be a 200-pound man who's a successful decathlete?
Right.
You know, like
Not many after that.
yeah.
You see people who change afterward. You know, my dad always says, he's got the story of, we went to a clinic with Mac Wilkins,
Yeah.
you know, discus thrower, and this was far after. This is probably 15, 20 years after his throwing career.
Yeah.
And he was just a little slim, like healthy-looking guy.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen Mac Wilkins in his prime, you know, he was
Yeah.
a beast.
Super sweet guy, but monstrous.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so you're not going to stay that monster forever.
Uh-huh.
You gotta find ways to be your person or be somebody else after the fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it doesn't hurt to, if you get to go to school to do a sport, you know, find something you love,
Mm-hmm.
you know, while you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find it where you're at.
Yeah.
Have lots of interests.
Yeah.
I think we all see that. We're all involved in the schools now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Even if you don't have a plan, like just trying to convince the kids to be more present.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Because like we are talking about, like how do you give a plan to a 17-year-old
Yeah.
stud athlete,
Right.
It's hard.
boy or girl? Like the reason why we're talking about that is because it's not easy, unless they're just those kind of kids.
Yeah.
There are just some kind of kid. It's just how they are, but a lot aren't. So just trying to convince them, like, when you get the shoes, like, it doesn't got to go to your head, but like enjoy the fact, like you're saying, like, dude, I'm wearing
Mhm.
a freaking Oregon jersey right now. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I get to throw, you know, with all these people, like try to be present in the moment, because once it's gone,
Yeah.
like you don't, you know,
Yeah.
you get to sit and talk about it, but that's not the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
And for a lot of kids too, you know, high school is the last thing they're ever gonna do in that sport.
Right.
You know, the last time. So it's like you know, it'd be great if you went on, but appreciate that time. Learn
Yeah.
what you
Enjoy
can.
it.
And it's hard. I'll keep channeling back to, it's hard getting it into 17, 18-year-old kids' heads.
Mm-hmm.
I was like that too. You know, you don't have a whole lot of insight into the future.
Yeah. The other thing that I took away that I thought was really interesting, like post-sport career, was how much the relationships that I made along the way affected the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it's probably worth it when you're in the moment, like lean into, you know, making those friendships and getting
Yeah.
to know the coaches and getting to know the trainers and getting to know the professors, and
Yeah.
because those things are all worth a lot.
They are worth a lot. And,
Yeah.
you know, some of my best friends are guys from the Oregon track team,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, guys I competed in high school. You know, you're talking about 25 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
almost 30 years, like early on in high school, where you could run into the guy.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you do. It's just
Yeah.
like, hey,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, you create memories,
Yeah.
but don't think that you're going to create them later on. Like, create them now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what you were getting at.
Mhm.
Like, create them now.
Yeah. Yeah. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Breathe it in. Yeah, I remember you talked about fouling out, or
Mhm.
you know, like my big failure was we had a meet that was organized for hammer throwers. It was the East-West Coast competition, and it was just for hammer throwers. It was just like the coaches were bringing their best groups, and we were doing a little teams of 3, and we were going to see which state was going to walk away with the with the thing. And I bombed out at that meet,
Oh.
and that was really, really rough. Like the trip over was rough anyway. I don't know why I was in a funk, but you know, the whole thing was really rough. And then looking back on it, like all the guys who were there, like invited me to go out to the beach, you know, and hang out when we were hanging out there. And, you know, I missed out on a lot of opportunities to have a good time,
Yeah.
you know, and not just be fixated on
Yeah.
the competitions and stuff.
There's a lot more to it than the
Mhm.
competitions
Yeah.
itself. With any sport, any game, there's a lot more to it with
Yeah.
the people you're involved with.
So I got like 2 more rounds of questions if we got enough time, if you don't mind.
No,
Okay.
not at all. It's fun.
Okay, cool. The first one is we always try to have takeaways for parents, coaches, athletes, and stuff, right? And maybe I'll just spread these out a little bit if you don't mind. But what advice do you have for parents? Like, because they bring you their kids
Mm-hmm.
and they care a lot. What do you think is the thing that, as parents, provides you with the most progress working with kids?
You know, you've seen so many sides of it. I've come across so many parents, and you know, luckily track and field's a pretty chill
Mm-hmm.
sport where you're not getting those crazy parents. But I've gotten a couple.
I was gonna say, You have semi recently. Working with Sarah, I know.
Yeah. So you get them. The advice goes both ways. Of course, let the coach coach, and be supportive of your kid. You see it a lot of times. A kid comes back to track the next day and their clothes and shoes are soaking wet.
Yeah.
You don't know the situation, but it's just
Right.
like, did the parent? I know us as parents right now, my wife and I, like, we're the ones just like, get your clothes out of your backpack, we're putting it in the dryer and get you ready for the next day, kind of thing. And it makes you realize that some kids don't have that. But it's just support your kids, be involved, let the coaches coach, and we're all out there to have fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think it can be pretty daunting, like especially like if you were never an athlete and then your kid's in sport and you got to like figure out like how do I do trainings or schedules or uniforms or whatever. But it's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
You get parents sometimes that have no experience in the sport, but they want to have, or they want to find out why is my kid not doing well. We have this ongoing joke with the track program, and I'm actually going to make one myself. I've had parents ask me about what we call the secret workout. Like, well, don't you just have a workout you can pull out? It's going to make my kid like the best ever. And, sometimes I've said, well, you mean like the workout I'm hiding from you guys? Like, I've just got it in this. So we joke we've got this secret workout in like this treasure chest, with a big chain and a lock. It's like secret workout, not going to open it unless your kid is deserving.
Yeah.
More than you would expect. I have run into so many parents like that. Well, why aren't you training my kid harder? It's like, I'm doing exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
Where's the special workout? Why, can't you just like do this to make them better than everybody else? It's like, no, I'm sorry.
Right. Like,
there's no secret workout. If your kid showed up for practice, that's a start.
Yeah.
And
the
it's
secret
always
is time.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
your
yeah.
sprint
The secret is
workout
time.
really might just be like
The
1060s today.
The
Like
secret
that.
is not skipping your warm-up lap. The secret is, being
Yeah.
here, and it's always those types too. It's like, well, what can you do for my kid? Well, have them show up to practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then you run into just amazing parents who are super supportive. You get all aspects of it.
Yeah.
And you guys have seen that. You've seen that coaching.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the kind of the difference between like football and track is track being a power, like all of them are power sports essentially. I guess the distance ones
yeah.
are a little different, but
Even the distance ones are middle distance.
Yeah,
You
you
still
s-
got to be fast.
yeah, you still to get anything out of that, you need to be giving close to full effort.
Yeah.
Right? Like very close to full effort to jump any higher or, throw any further. So, like how many kids are actually going through a track season consistently running as hard as they can or jumping as hard as they can or throwing as hard as they can? Like, yeah, if you don't give any effort, like a sprint workout, running like 10 total sprints where you're just hot dogging them, like, yeah, that's probably going to feel like a stupid, not very successful workout because it was a stupid, not very successful workout. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, you actually got to give effort
Uh-huh.
to get something
Yeah.
out. Whereas like football, you can, you could sandbag around, but then make a tackle and then, catch a ball and make one move and score a touchdown where you felt like you got something out of it. So there's more like mental successes where track, like if you're not putting in the work,
Mhm.
you're not going to get anything out of it. Like maybe a little bit.
Well,
but
track puts you right out there, and you're fully exposed.
Right.
There's no faking it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're either good or you're not. Your time shows it. You're in front of the audience, and you run into a lot of athletes that come out, superstar athletes in other sports, and all of a sudden don't have a good experience or
they're gone right
lose
away.
100 race, and they're just like, this sucks,
Yeah.
Yep.
and then they're gone.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It really exposes you.
For years, sorry to step on you. For years, we've talked about, locally there's a school, Tumwater, that is a pretty good gold standard in athletics. They do well on most of their sports, and I always try to convince kids to get out and run. They're all, why are those kids so fast? It's like, sure, they do have every once in a while they'll have like a really good like college athlete, but not that often. Like it's not like it's not IMG Academy out of Florida. Their high school athletes just maximize their talent, and I remember I was helping I think the javelin, and I was probably should have been watching the javelin fly through the air, but I just had watched, I think it was like WF West. It was like a four team meet, Aberdeen, WF West, Tumwater, and Shelton. And it was like heat 1 was a mix of everybody. Heat 2 was like a mix of everybody. And there was like 3 heats of just Tumwater kids just running. And they weren't slow, but they weren't necessarily fast. It was just kids that had decided to do this other sport to get, like, they were getting better and they were trying their hardest and not worrying about the fact that, oh, I just lost. Like, some of those kids are probably pretty good athletes, and they took 5th in the 6th heat. Like, that's a really easy, like I talked about, like having some success, like a lack of success and being like, I'm bailing. But just like we talked about, like track over time, full effort, like you're going to get better. Like, not everybody's going to turn into Doug Sells or Kyle Cofield, but you're going to be a much better version of yourself than you are right now.
Well, in every other part of the world, they call it athletics. You know, and so it's athletic training, and I've battled that for years, just trying to convince kids to come out
and stay,
saying, I know you're this other sport. I know you want to like train in the weight room during the spring, but this is athletic training. Come out, sprint, jump, throw. Like, something's going to make you better at your sport. It's basically just a big workout for your other sport. And it's a hard thing to get across, though, to some people.
And how many kids I've been excited most of the time, unless they're pretty dedicated athletes, I'm like, I'm not even going to pitch it. Maybe I'll throw it out. Like, maybe you should think about this, but I just know that, it's probably not going to make it. But how many kids I've been excited because, like, that person's out. Awesome. And then it's like a week later, and I'll go talk to whatever their events coach is. And they're like, he stopped coming. She stopped coming. I'm like, oh, my God. God, just stick it out.
And then you had a pretty interesting experience, right? Because, again, your dad was your coach. So do you have any advice for, people who work with a parent or parents who work with a kid? Like, what's the fine line that you walk there in terms of, that relationship?
It's a thin line. And it depends on what kind of relationship you have with your parent. Some kids, I've always had a relationship with my dad. He's a great guy. He's just very straightforward and has been so supportive on everything I've ever done. And of course, you're going to get in arguments with them. You're always going to argue. My advice is just whatever side you're on, don't make that side so intense that the other side is just done. Meet in the middle. Kind of thing. So
take a break when you need to.
I think my dad and I are always good about discussing both sides of it, how I was feeling as an athlete and what he was seeing. I think it was a pretty unique situation for me. The type of coach my dad was, and that was how we spent time together. And I didn't know anything else, so that was it. That was the growing up of it.
He was a really easy guy to hang out with too.
He was.
So that makes it,
and he's funny, and if you get into his humor a little bit, he's funny. But I think my advice would say, make sure you're meeting in the middle. Whether you're the athlete, don't just think it's all about you, and if you're the coach, don't think it's all about you. It takes the two people to make it happen.
I think that's great advice. All right, I got one more thing. Last thing on the docket. Wait, no, I want to tell a story first.
All right.
Okay.
Fun.
So I've told this story before in code. I don't think we didn't, but right before you got hurt now, actually, I'm putting the timeline together. You came home on a break, and we did a little throwers quadrathlon together. You and me and Nick Owens and Adam Middles. And so I told the story before on the podcast. A lot
of muscle right there.
Yeah. Handsome.
Handsome group of muscle.
But I told the story on the podcast before that we, so for those of you, the test has a name. It's named after a coach, and I feel really bad that I'm forgetting the name of the coach who's got it. But it's a overhead shot. You throw a shot put overhead behind you.
Yeah, don't worry. I forget the name too.
Yeah, standing long jump, standing triple jump, and like a 30-meter sprint.
Throwers quadrathlon. Right?
Yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah.
Because I'm terrible with names, and I don't mean any disrespect. But we did the overhead shot. It went fine. We did the standing long jump. It went fine. You jumped very far. Do you remember what your best standing long jump was? 11.6, 12.2.
Yeah, it sounded like high 11s. Maybe almost 12. I don't know.
So, but then we got to the standing triple jump. And when we went over to the standing triple jump, and I was, again, pretty new to training. I'd only really been training for like 2 or 3 months or something. And we were doing the standing triple jump, and you did your first jump, and it was huge. You know, like I think at the time, I think on that day, my standing long jump was like 9.6 or something, and so you'd beat me by like 2 feet, and I was like, that's awesome. I'm gonna try to do that now. But then we did the standing triple jump, and you let off with a 11-foot jump, and then your next jump was one of those things where I felt like you had magically transformed into a deer, and you just like it didn't make sense, like the amount of like recovery and then the distance. And it was such a big jump that I remember the third wasn't quite as impressive because it was like you couldn't quite gather at the end of the second jump, couldn't quite catch the power again. But I remember seeing that and being like, oh, that's possible? Like I can do that and nobody will stop me? Like you can just train and get better and do the things. And that was a big moment for me in my training, because I think before I got done, I did like 11.2, so I never quite caught you, but I got pretty close.
That's far.
Yeah, and so but that was always the benchmark in my head, was like I gotta if I can catch Doug on jumps, then I'll have made it. That was a weird.
You surprise yourself a lot when you're doing those kinds of things. Anybody does.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I could standing triple jump out of this room.
It's a massive room, though.
We'll give you a couple more leaps.
The edge of the room is about. Imagine where you would be sitting right now. That's about where it is.
Yeah, it's a small room.
Well, the funny story about triple jumping too. Like I don't know if Powler, when he was talking to you guys, did he touch on his triple jumping at all? No. I mean, his senior year when
I do remember he had a very big broad jump. Though.
Big,
yeah.
He was a big guy his senior year.
Yeah.
He came to me and was just like, what's this triple jump about? I was like, you want to try triple jumping? And I did the same thing. I tried triple jump my senior year, and it's fun. It hurts a lot. It's hard on the body if you can't do it. But Powler comes out and he's a quick learner, and we work with him a little bit, and he's doing a meet, and he jumps like 42 feet, something like that, which is like the number 3 all time for Shelton. It's like, cool, man. And then but that just shows the triple jumping is a pretty good indicator of transfer of power and what you can do with those kind of events.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really fun day. It was a nice sunny day. It was unusually warm for the time of year and everything. It was a good time. But I do remember that. I remember thinking that he's magically transformed into a deer. Like I had enough time to like sit and contemplate my life while you were floating through the air. I was like,
I tried to stay up as much as I could in the air while you were thinking.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what the best second jump is, because that you get all that reactive forces and stuff, because it was significantly further than your first. I mean, it might have been 14 feet or something. Anyway, the last thing I want to talk about is a training tip thing, and it's probably a weird time in the podcast because we're an hour and 42 minutes into it and everything, but I have long had a pet theory that when you work with larger and more powerful athletes, and especially more powerful like relative to their body weight, when you get to the really high horsepower, per pound kind of athletes, that we way over train power, like that the volume of jumping and leaping and stuff is too much.
Yeah.
And that's based on my own experience of coming into the sport as somebody who was like a video game addict who didn't do any other sports, and then like was like, oh, I'm supposed to do this program and there's 500 jumps today, and then I'd get through like 4 of them and I'd be like, my ankle's gone.
Right.
I can't push anymore.
Right.
And then as I got better and better and better at it, because I did an 11.2 standing long jump, I did a 39-inch vertical. They were pretty good, right? But like the programs that I would get from people that were jump programs, or like the training that I would get from, like I got a workout sheet from a buddy who went to USC, and I got a workout sheet from a buddy that went to Wazoo, and like the volume of stuff that they did was like crazy to me. I was like, this seems like it's just too much jumping. Like, how do you do this and not fall apart? Is that something that like was your experience? Did you have too much jumping? Do you think part of why the knee ended up going was that it was too much power volume, or do you think that it's necessary for the?
I think it was too much power. To be honest.
Yeah.
The volume was a little bit there, but not too much. But it was, you trained to be so explosive, and then you start learning the techniques of like, how do I channel all that explosion through where I want it to be right now, whether it's a long jump or jumping to the hurdles or throwing the shot. It's like, how do I make everything my body's made up of to transition through that implement or through that thing. So you get strong.
Yeah.
And some people can get too strong.
Yeah.
And it'll rip their bodies apart. So I don't think I ever experienced too much volume.
Yeah.
I think it was just you get really strong and Yeah, I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. I was trying to ask about training frequency and stuff when it's 25 years ago.
I was thinking about the quick side note. Yesterday I was working on my lawnmower, so I jacked it up and it was underneath my lawnmower. You know, of course I put all the safety blocks in place and everything, but I was thinking to myself, man, if this thing falls, like, I wonder how much I can bench press still. like, am I able to save my own life to get the lawnmower up? And I was doubtful. 'Cause, you don't lift. You're never gonna lift as much as you did back then. Anyway, the thoughts that go through your head sometimes when you're used to being really strong, and it's not quite there anymore.
Yeah. There's the secret. Do the Monroe method. Just don't ever get real strong. You'll always kind of be as strong as you. I'm not that far off.
But once you become dads and, in our age, we're
you know what the worst for me was?
Strong enough.
Once I moved into the weight room full time.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, I've talked to Kyle about it. It would be better if I just tried to, like, I should just get a membership to, like, the Shelton Athletic Club.
Did you find it hard to stay and work out?
I hate it.
Do it? Yeah.
I don't want to. It's, even though I love the area and I love the job, I don't want to, like, it's not a difficult job, but it's still, being a teacher is mentally freaking taxing, even in the weight room. Like, you're managing 60 kids' relationships, like, all of that. And you know what I mean? Like, there's always somebody with 60 kids in a classroom. There's always 5 of them that are going through a mental breakdown, right? And I try to be a good coach to everybody. And that's really, I would say, my strong suit is the personality and relationship building. So I spend a lot of time with that. So I'm just taxed, and I want to get out of that room because it's just like a point of stress, Yeah. So it was working a little bit. This last trimester, I had a long lunch period, so I was able to get in there before I was too taxed out. But, like, after school, like, no shot.
Yeah.
I have the energy. Like, if I would have I probably should just get a membership at the SAC and try that out. Like, and even, like, Kyle was like, well, you come over, and Kyle has a very nice gym. But I was like, this is a workspace for me now, though.
Right.
Like,
you got to get out of those spaces, too.
Yeah. So
like, all 3 of us being teachers, we understand, like, we got to get out of those spots.
Right.
My wife tells me, why don't you stay after school and, like get all your stuff organized and maybe do a project or something in your classroom? And I'm just like, no way.
Yeah.
It's
I want it out of here as quick as I can, just so I can reset my mind.
I can go home and work. Like, after this, I'll probably get home. It'll probably be 5 o'clock. I'll probably put another 4 or 5 hours into the podcast, and it's not going to feel because I enjoy it. But if I stayed here and me and Kyle were just, that would feel like we were burning hard, and so it's just interesting being stuck in the same spot. Like, you gotta change it up a little bit. I don't know how the hell we got on that, but
I don't either.
Doesn't matter. No one's watching this anymore?
Yeah, they are. Are you kidding me? Thousands. All right. Well, you got any other words of wisdom? Anything to plug? Shelton Invites going to be on Saturday this week.
Yeah, we covered so much. Shelton Invites coming up and soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's great weather. Just have such good support right now with the whole community and school and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it was really awesome chatting with you guys about this stuff.
Yeah.
Brought up some good memories that I didn't think were there still.
Yeah.
And
Surprise yourself.
Start losing them a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that.
That did happen.
Yeah.
I was there for that. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, like, comment, subscribe, share. We appreciate the help. Have a wonderful day.